The Agenda is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service, moving forward.
Kerwin Gaines here, host of The Agenda. Excited. This summer has been on fire and for The Agenda, and we are keeping it going. We have an on-site report from Governor Carney, who's at the Democratic Convention in Chicago. Welcome, Governor Carney.
Great to be with you, Kerwin.
Hey,
from Chicago.
Yes, from Chicago. Chicago is on fire, and this time in a good way. In a good way, because the Democratic Convention is there. And we love that our current president is from Delaware, and he's always representing Delaware, and you are there representing Delaware. Tell us a little bit about how it is going.
Well, last night was really amazing. It was a tour de force for our president, our native son, Joe Biden. He gave a really strong speech. He had lots of energy, and you could tell that I think he felt the moment that he was passing the torch. He very strongly endorsed Vice President Harris as our nominee, as the next president of the United States, an historic candidate for sure. And it was just a really strong speech that I was with the Delaware delegation, and we were very excited down there in front to be cheering on our native son. And the enthusiasm in the convention center was incredible. And it just, I think, goes to show you how much has changed in the last several weeks since President Biden decided not to seek re-election. And he did because, as he said, it's not, the title's one thing. He loves being president of the United States, but the country is more important. And he passed the baton to the Vice President Harris, who has really come out strong across the country, and last night made an appearance. And all the speakers basically demonstrated the significant contrast between Vice President Harris and former President Trump. And the differences couldn't be more stark. And the decision that Delawareans and Americans have to make, so it's very clear.
So from being feet on the ground, so to speak, what do you think the key message was as a whole from the other speeches? We had Hillary Clinton there as well. We had just a brief, I guess, compliment from Kamala Harris. And what do you think the overall key message was for voters out of yesterday's speeches?
Yeah, I think this is a critical moment for the country to go forward, not look back, to go forward and not look back, to go forward with Vice President Harris, who will bring leadership for the future and not go back to the failed presidency of Donald Trump. And more importantly, his old out-of-date ideas and grievances. I mean, that's really fundamentally what he is running on. And so it's a decision as to whether you want to go forward with our priorities and with democracy, or do you want to go backwards with former President Trump? I think that's fundamentally the distinction that's being drawn here. It's very clear, it's very easy to see. The former president makes no bones about the grievances that he brings to the table, the biases, the prejudices, the fact that he is a convicted felon, all of that. The differences couldn't be more clear. The enthusiasm among the faithful here is really incredible. And so we'll get a big boost, I'm sure, out of this convention.
That's what I was going to mention as well, and the enthusiasm. I would say enthusiasm, party unity. We're dealing with something. We're bringing in a candidate here in football terms as in the fourth quarter. And, elections are about time. I had Senator Coons on last week, and I said, and I made it clear to him that we are aware that an election, you need time to win certain parts of the country. Regardless of whatever your politics are, if you got to go after certain parts of the country, and that takes time. Candidates fly from one end to the other in a day, trying to make sure that they're getting those pieces together. From a party unity standpoint, do they feel that there is enough time for Vice President Harris to do what's necessary to win the votes?
Yeah, I think the fact that there is incredible party unity, which normally takes a long time to develop prior to a convention, during the primaries, and lead up to the convention. And normally conventions are required to bring people together, to bring the people that supported the various candidates during the primary season. But now it's a very different thing. And so we've all come together with enthusiasm around the transfer of the baton, the handoff of the baton, or the torch, if you will, from President Biden to Vice President Harris, without all those, all the confusion that goes with other candidates and other issues that might get in the way. So I think that gives us an opportunity to really hit the last couple months of this campaign running. They've hit the ground running. They already have across the country, particularly in those states. And because you're running against a former president whose popularity is below 50%, I mean, you either love him or you hate him. And so that makes it a lot easier to focus on the votes that you need to turn your way. It does also make it more challenging, because those voters are going to be somewhere in the middle in a handful of swing states. So that does, again, compress the campaign to those states and to those folks that kind of are undecided, and it's a very small number.
Do you think from the speeches, now I know we're only on night 2, and I know every night is going to be great, but is the Democratic Party, focusing directly on those key demographics that we need to win in order to move forward? Are you finding that the speeches that you've heard, especially last night, are targeting those key demographics?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent they are. You're talking about a lot of independents, younger women, maybe certain groups of kind of white male voters that are undecided at this point. The messages, there was a lot of different messages, obviously several that were targeted towards women voters, but also to folks that are struggling every day to make ends meet. Really, the fundamental question there is, who do you trust to look after middle class and people struggling to make ends meet every day? Donald, the former President Trump, who really only cares about rich folks in the elite, or Vice President Harris, who has come out of the middle class, and she's a diverse candidate, would be the first female president, and also African American. So there's a lot of dynamics going on here, and messages that really go to folks that are kind of in the middle politically, in the middle economically, and in the middle geographically.
Do you feel, I know this isn't your first Democratic convention, but do you feel that this one is different? And if so, why? Like, do you feel like there's history here in the making?
Yeah, well, there's definitely history. First of all, you have the personal side of it with our native son, President Biden, somebody that I worked for nearly 40 years ago, met my wife there, and so many of us know the president personally. We refer to him, or have until to the last 4 years, as Joe. And so there's that personal element that was really on display last night. And then you have the historic nature of Vice President Harris' candidacy, You have somewhat unprecedented nature of the opponent, former President Trump coming back after he lost the election 4 years ago. And really, I don't think I can't remember a campaign in my lifetime that's based so much on grievance and trying to separate people more. You've always had some of that, but it's been below the surface, not so blatantly above the surface like we've seen in the last several months.
Yeah, I'm trying to be as unbiased as I possibly can, but I don't know if we've ever had a felon running for president and having to go up against him. I don't know how much of the rhetoric is that within the party.
Yeah, that was on display last night. Several people made that point. It should be a significant one, frankly, for voters. It should be something that they consider. It obviously, for those who are supporting Vice President Harris, a big part of that is, her opponent, and so I think that's an issue certainly with the undecideds, who again tend to be independent voters, not as much democratic in terms of democratic values and policy matters. So it is kind of front and center, with January 6th and that all that imagery, which was again on display last night. It's hard not to be, to feel and the enthusiasm and the necessity of the moment. This is a moment in history where we've got to turn back that kind of a challenge that comes from grievance, and that is a flag carried by a man who is a convicted felon. I mean, we're a better country than that.
Yeah, I have to ask. You mentioned that, and it's well known that you have have known the president for the past 40 years, and I'm sure that there's been conversations post his decision. What's the general feeling? I mean, how is he doing? Is he still comfortable with his decision? Is it melancholy around the White House, and what is his feelings moving forward?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm close enough to characterize his feelings, but you could see and hear some of it last night. I hear what he said, and I can look through those words and feel the energy, the ambition, the desire to lead the charge himself, but also the recognition that handing off to his vice president is the right thing to do for the country, and to carry the flag for democracy, and to carry the Democratic banner into this election. I'm sure it's a bit of a battle within himself, but I think for the rest of us, for me, I follow his lead to a certain extent, but you can just see and feel the enthusiasm within the party and within the folks that have to do the work between now and Election Day that are in that room last night. And it's just incredible. And it was a great send-off for him, frankly.
Yeah.
A tremendous thank you for his 50 years of service to our country and our state.
And I think that was the chant last night, if my speakers were correct at home. Thank you, Joe, right?
Absolutely. And first it started with, we love Joe, we love Joe. And then it was thank you, Joe. And it was thank you, I think, both for his 50 years of service, and thank you for recognizing that the moment required that he hand the torch to the next generation, and to the next generation of leaders, and in this case, to an African-American woman.
Yeah, and Senator Coons, when he was on last week, made it clear that God isn't done with him yet, and I feel very comfortable in saying that. I know that this won't be the last that we see of President Biden in some form of public service. and doing great things in the community, not just in Delaware, but throughout the country. Looking ahead, what are your expectations for the remaining days there at the convention?
I think this convention hall better be firmly tethered to the ground, because I think this thing is going to blow up with enthusiasm as we get moved through the rest of the week, culminating with Vice President Harris's speech on Thursday night. I think it's just going to be incredible. The other thing, Kerwin, I would note, I've been following these conventions since I was quite young and attending them more recently. What's amazing to me as I travel up and down in the elevators in this hotel and onto the floor, how incredibly diverse our party is and has become. And it was a transition that didn't happen overnight, and it didn't always happen easily. If you go back to the days of the Dixiecrats and where Southern states and Southern Democrats dominated the party. But it's an incredibly energetic and diverse party, and one that I think represents this great country of ours.
Briefly, to surmise, sir, what would you tell an undecided voter right now that really doesn't know who they're going to vote for? How would you tell them, or what would you tell of them in regards to voting democratically?
I would just say, look at the difference. You know, who stands for you? Who's going to put your interests above his interests? Who's going to put the country's interests above his personal interests? And it's the decision for me is really an easy one, because the differences are so stark and so clear. And it's a moment really where we need to make sure that we stand up for this great country, for its democracy, and for the values that have brought us to where we are today.
Okay. In closing, sir, would you have anything that you would like to say in regards to your campaign?
Well, I don't know that this is the time for that, but I will say that somebody asked me the other day or last night before the convention, what were the issues that I thought were important to people across this country. And I responded by saying, look, I'm running for office in Delaware, and I've knocked on about 10,000 doors, and I've been talking to people on their front porches across our largest city for the last several months. And I can tell you what they're worried about. They're worried about safety in their neighborhoods. They're worried about how they're going to make ends meet, how they're going to pay the rent, how they're going to make the mortgage payment. They're worried about the education and the quality of the schools for their children. They're worried about a lot of things that you don't hear when you come to this national stage, and the issues that tend to be more prominent. They're concerned about the conditions of their own neighborhood and the block that they live on. And when you boil it all down, those of us who have the privilege of serving in elected offices, and that's our job. Our job is to do the blocking and tackling to make sure that life is better and gets better for everybody we represent. And at a larger scale, that's what this convention is all about. The Democratic Party has always been about supporting and lifting up everybody in our communities and our states across the country.
And it seems from the responses that I'm getting, and I'm watching all the major news outlets, that is happening, that there is a positive vibe. And I hope that continues throughout the week. And I love that diversity that you brought up that is there, that we have not seen before in regards to any convention. AOC had a very strong speech last night. How it was received, I think it was received well, but getting that message out to everyone. So I hope that it continues. And I hope to see, we saw Chris Coons yesterday, and I hope that the Delaware delegation, we get to see them, even more of them on the national stage.
I'm sure you will. It'll probably gravitate a little bit more to the states of California and Minnesota for sure. And by the way, if I may just put plug in for my good friend Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. He's a good friend of mine. We served in the Congress together. What you see is what you get with Governor Walz. He is as authentic as they come, a great human being, school teacher, football coach, congressman, governor of a great state, just a wonderful guy.
Well, hey, we're thankful for him. We want him to do extremely well, and we know that that team between Harris and Walz will just be awesome, just awesome.
It's a great combo, no question. A winning combo.
A winning combo, absolutely. Governor Carney, thank you so much for taking time out of the busy schedule there in Chicago. Continue to do great things. You're always welcome here on the agenda, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Kerwin. It's been great to be with you.
Thank you. Everyone, Governor Carney from Chicago, from the National Democratic Convention, thank you so much for tuning in, making sure that your topics and your issues stay right here on the agenda. Look forward to seeing you soon, right here on DETV.